Welcome to the London Free Press Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. The town of Walkerton is mourning the deaths of 4 young softball players and their teacher after a fatal crash just east of Thorndale. 16-year-olds Danica Barker and Cadence Ford, 17-year-olds Rowan McLeod and Olivia Rourke, and 33-year-old Walkerton District Community School teacher and coach Matthew Eert are all being remembered this weekend in communities across Grey Bruce. So today I'm talking with London Free Press digital editor Patrick Maloney about this tragic crash and how the communities are coping. Hey, Pat, how are you?
Morning, Rachel. How you doing?
Morning. Good, good. This is a story that your various reporters have been following for a while, but let's start with the crash and talk about what actually happened. Where was this?
Yeah, so like you said, I can't really remember a crash where 5 people were killed in a single collision. So the size and scope of it is just never mind the age and the
Yeah.
circumstances, size and scope of it. So we've had a lot of reporters working on this story across a couple of different newsrooms, and it would have been Friday afternoon, so that's May 23rd. We got a tip that the police will announce when there's a significant collision, okay, they literally almost say nothing more than that. But then we got a tip that it involved high schoolers, which obviously is a very dramatic, very serious, very concerning detail.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so that's how it started. And we're at the scene of the crash, an hour or two after it happened. And it sort of unspooled from there. The details became clearer on Saturday. And like I said, I can't remember a crash this big. And it would be a huge tragedy, even in a large city like London. And when you
Yeah.
go to Walkerton, 5,000 people, uh, I mean, it's just devastating for the community.
Absolutely, yeah. Um, it happened at the corner of, I think it was Cobble Hills Road and Thorndale Road, so just
Yeah.
east of Thorndale. And there was several vehicles involved, right? Do we know
Right.
exactly how it happened? Do we know what happened?
No, so always very dangerous to speculate. We
Mm,
know that there was an SUV carrying the 5 people who died. There was a transport truck and there was another SUV. So 5 people died all in the same vehicle. And that was the teacher, Matt Eckert, and the 4 teenage athletes. So we don't know any details. Police have not released any details. And that's not uncommon in these cases. Obviously, they would probably have a sense very quickly of what happened, but they don't know it yet.
mm-hmm.
And generally speaking, in these cases, and I'm speaking totally hypothetically here, eventually, if there were charges laid, the public will get a better sense of what happened. But that's not always the case for obvious reasons in some collisions. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not clear yet on how many details we're going to find on the record about the cause.
Have there been charges laid yet? Or
No, no, nothing. No,
we
no.
haven't heard
And the
any?
investigation is ongoing, is what the police say.
Sure, sure. So some of the people in the 5 people in the car, the girls and the teacher, some died at the scene, some were taken to the hospital, so they were alive when they were taken with serious injuries, obviously.
Right. And the police again have not formally identified who died. And this is where I think the news media does play a pretty key role in the community, is filling in those gaps and telling people exactly what's happened and which families are affected and paying tribute to the people who died. So the
Mm.
ages of the people who died were made public by the police, but we filled in the gaps with our reporting, and other news organizations have done the same. So the teacher was Matt Eckert. They're all from Walkerton District Community School.
Mm-hmm.
And then the students were Danica Baker, Rowan McLeod, Olivia Rourke, and Cadence Ford.
Right.
And what we found out in our reporting was that they'd been in Dorchester for a high school softball tournament, and the team from Walkerton District Community School uh, finished second. And obviously, they were driving home. The coach and 4 of the players were driving home at the time of the
Mm-hmm.
crash.
So they were just celebrating. They'd just gotten their silver medals for placing second in this tournament, and then of course this happens.
Yeah, and it's
Well, not
my
of course,
colleague.
but
No,
tragically,
but
I
it's
should say.
tragic. My colleague Heather Rivers spoke to the organizers of the tournament
Mm-hmm.
at Slow Pitch City, is the name of the facility where they played, and she described she remembered the players winning the silver medal, the excitement, and you're about a 20-minute drive from the field to the crash site, and very difficult to. I mean, anyone with teenagers, anyone with kids. It's just difficult to think about the joy that they would have been having, how happy they were,
Yeah.
and then this tragic twist of fate. And I had someone speak to me that said it, for they had sons who were high school athletes, and you're traveling a lot, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like it's just this fear in the back of your head all the time. And I think for people who grow up in small communities, the travel is extensive, right? It's not that way in London necessarily, right? Where you've got, um, the schools are all within a 15-minute drive of each other and everybody's going 50 kilometers an hour. When
Sure.
you're in a rural community, you're traveling to a lot for youth sports, whether they're school or otherwise.
Yeah.
It's a really shakes you
And
up.
a lot of times without your family, right? So you're with a
Right.
teacher, with a coach, with your friends or whatever. So, oh yeah. Were there any injuries with the other vehicles that were involved? Because we know that they were in an SUV. There was another SUV and a transport involved. Any injuries or
Right.
deaths among those other
No,
people?
no fatal injuries. We're not sure the
Okay.
nature or the extent of the injuries. I'm not sure that we will ever get those details.
Yeah.
Focus, of course, has been on the five people who died, which has been devastating to Walkerton.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Obviously.
and you've seen, I think, the outpour, the emotional kind of outpouring there. People
Mm-hmm.
placing shoes. I'm not exactly sure the symbolism of it, but a sign of support, right? Shoes and
Yep.
outside of the front doors. And there was a huge memorial service on Sunday night. So you're in a town of 5,000.
Mm.
There's more than 1,000 people at the memorial service 48 hours after the crash. So that tells you a lot about the size
Yeah.
of the scope of the grief.
This school was a K to up to the end of high school, right? So it was a full, all of the years were there, from K to grade 12. So I mean, these kids, I can assume most of them went there for their entire school career. They all grew up together. It's not like you went to elementary and then
Right.
went to a different high school with different friends. They all, I assume, were together for their entire school career.
Yeah, and it puts into context this the how broad the effect is of this. Like the one of my colleagues spoke with a parent at the school whose child is in kindergarten,
Mm.
and but one of the students who died was a volunteer in the kindergarten class. So now you've got a 5-year-old who is
Yeah.
directly affected, right? It knows someone
Yeah.
they know. And of course, everyone knows the teachers, right? And
Of
like
course.
everyone in the town would know the teachers. And so Matt Eckhart was a pretty good athlete based on the reporting we've seen out of Owen Sound, and an active person. And these four teenagers all seem all the photos we're seeing of them, they're playing softball,
Mhm.
volleyball, they're fishing. Like, these are active people in the prime of their life. And it just makes it all the more tragic when you see them,
Mhm.
when you think about it in that way.
Let's talk. I was going to get in a little bit more about the victims, and talking about how they are all very involved in the community. Matt Eckert was a coach for a couple of teams, I think. He did a lot of stuff with the school, of obviously, and just was, I think, pretty well known, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, like any teacher in a small community, right? He would
Yeah.
know hundreds of kids. And
Mhm.
yeah, the Owen Sound Sun-Times has done some really good reporting on the extent of his athletic pursuits. And I think for a lot of guys who were really athletic in their youth, becoming a teacher is obviously a pretty attractive job, because on top of being a good job, coaching is obviously a huge part of that, right?
Mhm.
And there was, so that was a big part of his career too.
Yeah, and he took the team to win second place at this tournament, obviously.
Right.
Um, uh, where was the rest of the team when they were at the tournament? Do we know, like, were they all coming in separate cars? Was there a bus that was driving them? Because this group was in one car, obviously.
Yeah, not really clear to
We
us. And
don't know.
again, it's been difficult to sift through all the details. And so I don't really have a question to that one, but it does,
Mm,
raise questions about, the risk that's taken. And I'm not questioning the risk. I'm not saying it's an unreasonable risk, but there is a risk, right? When you're traveling for sports, for school.
of course. Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the girls. It seems like a lot of them were on other teams. There was memorials. Some of the other teams had posted things, remembering these girls. A couple of them played volleyball, I think.
Gymnastics. Yeah.
Gymnastics. They were just very involved as well. So this affects so many groups in the community.
Right. And so Danica Baker and Cadence Ford were both 16, and then Rowan McLeod and Olivia Rourke were both 17. And yeah, like you said, athletic, involved,
Mhm.
active. and probably pretty good, right? Here, I mean, we finished second
Yeah,
place, 14 team tournament.
sure. How is the school supporting the students now? What are they doing to support those who are remembering their friends, their peers? Maybe
Yeah,
they're volunteers, they're helpers.
yeah. The school board has was actually quite active in helping ensure the communication with the news media, and this is the Blue Water District School Board, and they had told us that there were 40 grief counselors at the school Monday morning. So,
Wow.
you're talking 2.5 days after the crash. So we're going to be 40 at that school Monday morning to help. I'm really not sure what the process would be, right? You're talking
Right.
to individual students, you're addressing the whole school. I mean, I went to high school for 5 years, like everybody did back
Mm-hmm.
in the 90s, and there was not one fatal crash in the whole time I was there. And I can tell you, if there had been, I would remember it because I know there was one the year before I got there. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember his name, I remember his picture, I remember everything about him.
Mm-hmm.
And here you have four students and a teacher. So um, an unforgettable
Yeah,
situation for that school. So yeah, 40 grief counselors were at the
absolutely.
school.
And I think there's a GoFundMe, right? And that's raised quite a bit of money for
Right.
the victims' families.
Yeah, and I mean, that's become sort of a fairly common thing now, right?
Yeah.
People show their support by, and as of mid this week, it raised about $130,000, and this was to the description was that the money would help cover unforeseen costs, and there was a memorial scholarship that had raised several $1,000s also. So yeah, so like I said, fairly typical in the modern era where the
Mm-hmm.
GoFundMe account will launch and people will express their support
Mm-hmm.
financially.
Okay, let's talk about this weekend because we're remembering all of these victims are having funerals or memorial services. But you said
Right.
there was already one memorial service, but now all the individual services are happening this weekend.
Right. There was a community memorial candlelit vigil on Sunday night, so 48 hours after the crash. And then this coming weekend, there's a service Saturday morning. It's a joint memorial for Danica Baker and Olivia Rourke, and that's at the Walkerton Community Center. Then later on Saturday, the term was a celebration of life. There's going to be a celebration of life for Cadence Ford
Mm,
uh, as at the baseball field in Chesley.
mm.
And ceremony for Eckert is on Sunday morning at the Owen Sound District Secondary School. And then a memorial Sunday afternoon at the arena in the town of Chesley. And that's for Rowan McLeod. So yeah,
Okay.
so throughout the weekend there's memorial events.
We're certainly thinking of all the families and the students and the entire community of Walkerton. Even the Prime Minister had sent his condolences. So this is something that's making news all across Canada, right?
Yeah, yeah, pretty unusual for that to happen. You're looking at it, it drives home for you the size and scope of this thing,
Mm-hmm.
the tragedy. And we're still sifting through the details ourselves, trying to determine exactly what the cause was. And that's something we're going to keep reporting on. So I really encourage people to keep a watch for stories going forward on that.
Yes, we will. We'll watch your stories on that. And of course, anything coming from the memorials and remembering this wonderful group of people this weekend. Thanks for joining us, Pat.
Thank you.